Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey, actually. It's through India's economic transformation, seen through the eyes of Gurcharan Das in his, well, pivotal book, India Unbound.
It's quite a remarkable book, yeah. A blend of personal story and sweeping economic history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, maybe some surprising insights from it.
Because it's not just dry economics, is it?
Not at all. It's this profound personal and intellectual journey. It really shows us how specific policy choices shaped, well, the destiny of a whole nation and millions of lives.
Truly millions.
So let's maybe start with the author himself, Gurcharan Das.
Yeah.
He's not just an author. He's been a top corporate leader. He's a historian, a citizen. His perspective is kind of unique, isn't it? Both insider and outsider.
Right. Deeply patriotic, you feel that coming through, but also sharply critical when he needs to be.
Yeah, and the way he combines his own memoir with this macroeconomic analysis, it just makes complex policy feel, well, accessible.
It really does. He brings it down to a human level.
And he sets the scene for us back in 1947. Crucial context. You have the euphoria of newly free India, flags flying, talk of dignity.
A huge moment of hope.
Huge. But underneath all that excitement, a monumental challenge. India inherited an economy just drained by centuries of British policies.
Absolutely. Minimal industrial capacity. Literacy rates were abysmal.
And just crushing widespread poverty, a really tough starting point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. After centuries of colonial exploitation, India's leaders faced this enormous task. How do you modernize quickly but also ensure social justice? It's a huge balancing act.
And Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's vision, as Das describes it, was really striking. He embraced a socialist, centrally planned economy.
Inspired by the Soviet model, right? 5-year plans and all that.
Exactly. Heavily inspired by that. The focus was squarely on heavy industries: steel, power, dams, consumer goods, private enterprise. They were definitely secondary.
And foreign imports were restricted to encourage self-reliance.
Right. That strategy known as import substitution industrialization, or ISI. Build it yourself, don't buy it from abroad.
The intention, you have to say, was noble. Protect the poor, avoid the pitfalls of unchecked capitalism they saw elsewhere.
Absolutely. Very understandable intentions.
But Das's critique really begins right here, doesn't it? He sees the immediate impact this had on India's potential.
It does, and it's important to consider that, while noble, this approach came at a cost. A significant cost, really, to efficiency and innovation.
How so?
Well, Das vividly recounts how private businesses faced this endless maze of licensing requirements, price controls, production quotas.
Ah, the famous license permit quota arrived.
That's the one. It became infamous. Under this system, entrepreneurship wasn't just difficult, it was almost seen as, well, morally suspect in some circles.
And the thing that really struck me reading the book is that Das saw this firsthand, even as a boy.
Yeah, his personal experiences really ground the analysis.
He watched talented Indians dream big, only to get completely bogged down, disillusioned by these government barriers. For him, that was the first, stark sign that policy can just kill potential.
A powerful early lesson for him.
Which brings us to what Das calls the heart of his critique. These lost decades, roughly 1965 to 1991.
Yeah. Decades of, in his view, profound wasted opportunity.
What did that look like on the ground, economically speaking?
Well, India experienced what got famously, or perhaps infamously, dubbed the Hindu rate of growth. GDP growth averaged a really sluggish 3.5%.
3.5%, when other Asian economies were starting to take off.
Exactly. And the systemic problems were just rampant. The bureaucracy ballooned, corruption became deeply entrenched, sort of a way of life almost. And the country lagged way behind the West in adopting new technologies. Exports were minimal because of those ongoing import restrictions. It was quite an inward-looking economy.
And it wasn't just the economic policies causing drag, was it? There was significant political turmoil, too.
Oh, absolutely. That compounded everything. It diverted resources, deepened the inefficiencies. You had wars with Pakistan in 65 and 71.
Right.
Then there was the emergency from 1975 to 77 under Indira Gandhi, which severely curtailed democratic freedom.
A controversial period.
Very. And even things like bank nationalization, populist measures intended to help the people, often just ended up adding layers to the bureaucracy and inefficiency.
So, if we zoom out, what was a major consequence of this whole period? Das highlights something specific.
He does. The brain drain. It became a huge issue.
Right.
Frustrated by this lack of opportunity, the ceiling they kept hitting, skilled Indians, especially engineers, scientists they just left.
Migrated overseas.
Yeah, in droves. To the US, UK, Canada, elsewhere. It was a massive export of India's best human capital. A real loss.
And here's where it gets really interesting and personal in the book. Das himself, working as a corporate executive for Procter & Gamble.
Yeah, he was right in the thick of it.
He personally experienced the absurd delays, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get approvals for just basic business decisions. Can you maybe share a detail from that? It really shows the frustration.
Oh, absolutely. He tells this story, I think it was about launching a new detergent, Vicks Vapor Rub, maybe, something quite basic.
Yeah.
And he recounts having to wait years, literally years, for the permits, dealing with countless bureaucrats, endless paperwork, endless meetings.
There's for a detergent?
Yes. All while knowing their global competitors were innovating, launching new products constantly, moving at lightning speed. He described it as just debilitating, a constant drain on energy and ambition.
Wow. So what did all this mean for the social fabric, the mindset?
Well, it paints a pretty sobering picture, doesn't it? A whole generation basically learned how to work the system, how to navigate the bureaucracy, rather than focusing on genuine innovation or efficiency.
So talent was diverted into just managing red tape.
Largely, yes. Talented entrepreneurs were either completely stifled, just gave up, or they were pushed into the informal, unregistered economy, operating on the margins outside the system.
It really does sound like a story of missed chances, suppressed potential on a massive scale.
But that's certainly Das's core argument for this period.
Okay, so after those frustrating decades, Das brings us to this pivotal moment. He even calls it India's second independence.
A powerful phrase.
The dawn of liberalization, starting around 1991 through the rest of the 90s.
Right, and it came about because of a crisis, a real cliff edge. By 1991, India was basically on the brink of bankruptcy.
How bad was it?
They had only about 2 weeks' worth of foreign exchange reserves left, couldn't pay for essential imports. It was an absolute emergency that forced radical change.
So necessity really was the mother of invention here.
You could say that. Under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and critically his finance minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, they initiated these sweeping reforms.
What did they actually do?
A lot, very quickly. Industrial licensing. Abolished in most sectors overnight. Import duties. Slashed dramatically. Foreign investment, which had been viewed with suspicion, suddenly welcomed.
Wow.
The rupee was devalued to make exports more competitive. Restrictions on private businesses expanding were just lifted. It was a dismantling of the license Raj, piece by piece.
That sounds like a complete U-turn, a total overhaul.
It really was. Quite revolutionary for India at the time.
Looking at this dramatic turnaround, what's maybe one unexpected ripple effect, beyond just the headline economic numbers, that Days highlights?
Well, what's truly fascinating, and Das captures this excitement, is just how quickly the transformation happened once those shackles came off.
Like releasing a coiled spring.
Exactly like that. The IT and software services sector, for instance, it almost exploded out of nowhere onto the global scene.
Companies like Infosys, Wipro, TCS.
Precisely. They became household names globally incredibly quickly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just IT. Telecom, banking, manufacturing, these sectors also grew rapidly. It showed a broad-based revival was possible.
And this led to the emergence of something new socially too, right?
Absolutely. A confident, aspirational, and much more globally connected middle class started to emerge.
People started having different ambitions.
Completely. Das describes it as this exhilarating period of unleashed potential, when India, as a nation, really started to believe in its ability to compete on the world stage. You could almost feel the shift in mood reading the book.
A collective sigh of relief, maybe, and a surge of optimism after decades of frustration.
I think that captures it well.
And what makes India Unbound so rich, I think, is that it isn't just about GDP figures and policy changes.
No, not at all.
It delves deeply into the profound cultural and social shifts that went hand in hand with these reforms.
Precisely. You saw the rise of consumerism, for example. Global brands entering the market, which was a huge shift from the old world of scarcity and limited choice. Suddenly there were options.
And attitudes changed, too, towards business.
Massively. Success in business, making money through enterprise, was no longer sort of frowned upon or seen as slightly suspect.
Right, the old socialist suspicion.
That began to fade. Attitudes towards wealth creation and entrepreneurship started changing significantly. It became something aspirational.
And you saw that reflected in what young people wanted to do.
Definitely. With that, youth aspirations really shifted. Instead of primarily aiming for stable, but often, let's face it, bureaucratic government jobs.
The IAS dream, as it used to be called.
Right. Young people started gravitating towards these dynamic new careers in tech, in finance, in entrepreneurship itself. It was a complete reorientation of what success looked like for a generation.
A different path opened up.
A completely different path. And this brings up a really critical point Das makes. These changes weren't just material. They weren't just about having more stuff.
What else were they?
He argues they also fundamentally liberated the Indian mindset, moving away from this deeply ingrained, scarcity-driven worldview that the license Raj had fostered for decades.
So a psychological shift as much as an economic one.
Exactly. A belief in possibility returned.
Okay, so if we try and distill it all down, India Unbound seems to leave us with some really powerful key themes. What would you say are the main ones?
I think you could pull out 4 big ones. First, a clear message. Freedom and prosperity are intrinsically linked. Economic liberalization, he argues, is as crucial for human flourishing as political freedom.
Okay, freedom and prosperity linked. What's second?
Second, and this one really hits home reading his account, policy truly shapes destiny.
How so?
It's just stark how a few policy missteps, maybe seemingly small or well-intentioned at the time, ended up costing India decades of progress. Decades.
A huge opportunity cost.
Immense. It's a powerful reminder that policy choices aren't just theoretical debates. They reshape millions of lives in very real ways.
Right. What's the third theme?
Third, Das makes a compelling, though perhaps debatable for some, case for the market as an engine of equality.
How does he argue that?
By unleashing wealth creation, he contends, the market ultimately provides far more opportunities, even for the poor, than centrally controlled economies typically manage to. It lifts more boats, essentially.
Okay. And the fourth?
And finally, the book is really a testament to the incredible resilience of a nation. Despite decades of what he sees as mismanagement and stifling controls, India's inherent entrepreneurial energy didn't die. It survived somehow.
Dormant, maybe.
Dormant, perhaps suppressed, but it flourished remarkably quickly once it was finally given a chance, post-1991. That resilience is a key theme.
Those are powerful takeaways. And the book itself, as a piece of writing, has clear strengths.
Definitely.
That unique combination of memoir and macro analysis really works, I think. It gives you that personal connection alongside the big picture.
And having his insider corporate perspective is invaluable. You don't often get that level of detail about navigating the system from someone who is actually doing it at a high level.
True. Plus, the broad historical sweep, and in fact, he makes complex economics pretty accessible for a general reader. That's quite an achievement.
It is. It opened up the debate beyond just economists.
But, like any book with a strong viewpoint, it's probably important to acknowledge potential criticisms too, right?
Absolutely. And Das himself acknowledges some debates. His strong pro-market stance, some critics argue, maybe glosses over or downplays the issues of inequality and the need for social safety nets, which can become more acute during rapid liberalization.
So the distributional impacts maybe aren't fully explored.
Perhaps not as much as some would like. And also, the focus is very much on urban and industrial growth. Rural India, agricultural concerns, they receive less attention in the narrative compared to the stories of IT and manufacturing.
That's a fair point. It's primarily an urban, middle-class, corporate-inflected story he tells.
To a large extent, yes, though its implications were, of course, national.
So wrapping this up, our final takeaway from India Unbound seems to be a pretty powerful one. Prosperity isn't some kind of birthright or accident.
No, it's the direct result of deliberate choices. Policy choices.
And policy reform, even when it's politically really difficult, can just profoundly change the trajectory of millions and millions of lives.
That's the core message. And Das ends his book, published some years ago now, but still relevant, on a note of cautious optimism.
How so?
He believes India has indeed unbound itself from its past constraints, but he warns it must constantly guard against slipping back into protectionism, back into complacency.
The journey is never really over.
Never truly over for any nation, he implies. It requires constant vigilance and adaptation.
Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to ponder. Considering India's journey, as Das lays it out, what might be the greatest challenge for any nation when its inherent entrepreneurial energy gets stifled by policy? And maybe, how long does it actually take for that energy to fully reemerge once the conditions finally change?
That's a deep question. Food for thought indeed.